Welcome, everybody, to Pasadena and the majestic Rose Bowl, one of the unique settings in all of sport. This year's Rose Bowl, presented by Prudential, is a crucial part of the college football playoff. Today, we have two of the best teams in college football going head-to-head in a top-5 matchup. Both teams looking to impose their will. We'll see the number 4 team in the country, the Ohio State Buckeyes, taking on the second-ranked team, the Georgia Bulldogs. 3A Sports College Football, I'm Chris Fowler, here in the booth with Kirk Herbstreit. I think we've talked long enough, Kirk. Let's get this game going. Buckeyes will kick this away to start us off. Fields it inside the 5-yard line. And he stopped at the 19. Good job by the coverage team. The Bulldogs offense will get the first swing today. And here comes that star wide receiver. He's got the bounce, the aura. He walks on the field with some swag saying, I'm the man, and I know it.
Oh, he certainly does, and you know what? He probably should. It's founded in all the hard work that he puts in, the dedication in the summertime during practice. You can see some of the defensive backs watch him as he warms up, studying him, because they know it's going to be a long day trying to deal with this receiver.
He's wrapped up nicely there by the freshman. So a tricky situation here. 3rd and very long inside your own 20. How much of a risk do you take? You know this defense could be very aggressive at this moment. Finds a man to the left. Big catch downfield. They bring him down, but an explosive play by this offense. Big game.
Man, they got exactly the right coverage early in this game that they were looking for. They found the matchup, and they hit a big one early.
Georgia setting up with a 1st and 10 now. To the air. It's back. Getting set. Here's 2nd down. Here's the snap, looking to throw here. Makes a quick grab, but a huge hit by the linebacker. What a tackle. 3rd down play, looking for a fresh set of downs. Try and muscle for the 1st down. And he will be stuffed for no gain. Dogs will line up to boot it away. And he should be able to pin them back deep here with his first punt. And the punt lands out of bounds. Let's see exactly where they'll spot it here. The Buckeyes offense takes the field. The first chance we had to see them today. If there's one guy on this defensive side, Kirk, who can be a game wrecker, it's this elite pass rusher. Very much on the quarterback's mind today.
Yeah, Chris, but it's going to be very tough. This quarterback does a nice job of moving around in the pocket, and also he's going to have an awareness.
And he can't escape. It's a sack for the defense.
Boy, great job here by this defensive lineman from Georgia using his hands and his speed to close in on the quarterback and come up with this sack. And they've had some great ones over the years, Chris, as you know, starting with our guy, David Pollack, who had as good a career in his time in Athens as anybody who's ever put on that uniform. Richard Seymour, a brilliant career with the Patriots, but it all started in Athens. Jalen Carter, just an enforcer up front. And I even throw in Geno Atkins, who had a great career in the interior of that Georgia defensive line.
Tackled behind the line. It's a loss of 2. Well, a serious challenge for this offense. You don't want to be in 3rd and long inside your own 20. How much of a risk will they take to try to pick up this 1st down? The defense stops him short of the marker in that screen. 4th down coming up. The Buckeyes will line up to punt it away. And the coverage team makes the stop on this return. And the powerful Georgia offense is back out on the field. The last time they were forced to punt it away. Can they get points out of this possession? It's a 2-yard gain. 2nd and 8 coming up. To throw, it's Beck. Finds that big tight end for a short pass. A huge hit by the linebacker. A collision of big bodies there. Out of the gun now on 3rd down. Quick throw, catch made on the out route. And he'll head out of bounds, but not before picking up enough for a 1st down.
Well, when you play zone defense on third down and you don't get pressure from your defensive line, you're going to give a quarterback a lot of time to be able to find an open receiver and eventually get the first down. Not surprised at all that they're able to convert.
First down. Looking to throw the football. Pressure is coming. He's going to be brought down by that ferocious pass rush. Nice sack.
What a play here by this defensive line. You can get so caught up in the flashy offense of Ohio State in recent years. But let's not forget, they still play defense in the shoe and have such great history and tradition with that defensive line play.
A sack makes it second down and forever. They'll go with the ground game here. Running back takes the handoff. And just a short gain this time, they're able to get him down. Critical third down play for this offense right here. Here's the snap, looking to throw. Going for a big play downfield. The catch is made for a huge pickup. And he takes it all the way to the end zone. Touchdown, Georgia. Well, a touchdown to a wide open man. What in the world was going on the defensive side of that?
What was the defense thinking here? You can't let a player roam free like that. They just completely forgot about him and gifted him a touchdown.
Kicking team on now for the extra point. PAT is good, so it's 7-0. Now the kickoff team is out on the field. He thought about returning it, but instead takes a knee. It'll be a touchback, and he'll start at the 25. Okay, here comes the Ohio State offense back on the field. Off the play fake, looking to throw on first down. The freshman introducing himself to the quarterback there.
Well, you got to do a better job with your fake as the quarterback. The defense did not bite at all on the play action, allowing them to continue to come after the quarterback and come up with that sack.
Short loss on the play sets up second and long from the 18. Looking downfield, it's Howard. Goes to his right side there for the completion. And they bring him down after a solid gain, but it's still well short of the first down marker. On third down, he drops to throw. Contact as he threw it. Incomplete. He was hit as he threw the ball. That's a big third down defensive play. Buckeyes will send the punt team onto the field. We're going to kick it away for the second time. The fair catch made at the 25-yard line. And the Bulldogs offense is back out on the field. The last possession, they really had the passing game clicking, moved right down the field for a touchdown. But they don't make the connection. That one is incomplete. So second and 10 after the previous play. Quarterback sets up, looking for an open man. And a short pitch and catch to the tight end. But a huge collision blow delivered there by the linebacker. It's third down. Quarterback in the shotgun. He cannot escape the defense with a sack.
Chris, he's getting in there so quickly. You might want to consider a chip block with either the tight end or running back to slow him down. He's just too talented out there.
Dogs will have to kick it away. It's a rough series for the offense, and now he's on to punt it away. And the returner is brought down to wrap up the first quarter of play. Well, Kirk, it's Georgia on top so far. And at the end of the first quarter, let's check out the stats so far. Plenty of time for some plot twists here as we begin the second quarter. Here comes the Buckeye offense onto the field. This group is coming off a quick 3-and-out. Can they put something together in this drive? A gain of 2 yards. Now it's second down and 8. And they'll run it. with the draw play. And the senior able to make the stop after a short gain. We're backed up here trying to make something happen on 3rd and long. And the ball is handed off out of the shotgun. Fighting for yardage, but the defense stops him just short of that first down marker. The Buckeyes will send their punt team onto the field. Looking to flip the field here. He's got an opening. Watch out. He's got great speed. And he's going to head out of bounds, but not before picking up some good yardage on the return. Fresh set of downs for the offense. First down. Using his legs, it's Etienne.
You know, in the era that we live in right now, everybody wants to spread the field around, try to create space, try to create one-on-one matchups, and the defense is countered over the years by trying to play out wide. But here's a great example. The defense has the ability to play wide, but still be solid at the line of scrimmage, not give up big run plays.
On 3rd and short, they hand the ball off. Brought down to the 47, and that will move the sticks. Georgia getting set for the 1st and 10 now. And he's got it again. They stop him after a 6-yard gain, so 2nd and 4. They'll run it from the gun. Finds room at the 30. Tackle made at the 24-yard line. This offense really threatening now. The Bulldogs are going to keep this drive rolling. Out of the shotgun, he hands it off. Jukes, the defender, gets brought down after a solid game.
Man, you know, the back gets a lot of the attention here. He's a good back. I'd love to see that offensive line win the battle of the line of scrimmage.
And the Bulldogs looking to cash in the red zone. Looking to throw. It's Beck. That one falls incomplete. Looking for a flag. Doesn't get it. Brings up 3rd down. Can he make it to the marker? And he picks up the first down before they get him to the ground. A running play gives the offense a fresh set of downs. Running game is working. They'll stick with it on 1st down. Stopped short of the marker after just a short gain. Coming to the line on 2nd down. This is important. They want to avoid a 3rd and long. They're going to run it. And they're able to tackle the ball carrier there. So here we go. 3rd down in the red zone. The kind of play that decides football games. Fakes the handoff. Looking to throw. This one sails through the back of the end zone and incomplete. Coach is going to take the 3 points. Here comes the field goal unit. They'll set up at the right hash mark for this chip shot. The field goal is good. And that will extend their lead even further. So we've reached the 2-minute warning, and this offense trying to get something going here and cut into this lead before halftime. Solid job by the coverage team. They bring him down at the 16. Here comes the powerful Ohio State offense onto the field. Time is running out before halftime to cut into this now 2-possession lead. The pocket breaking down. And the junior gets home making a sack there. Pass protection, a serious issue. Another sack makes it 2nd and long. There's the snap, and he's looking to throw. And he's got his man open downfield. They bring him down, but that is a huge play for this passing game. Big game.
Boy, nice job here by this offense, creating an opportunity for this receiver to excel after the catch. It's early in this game, so this defense better get their arms around this receiver because he could be a monster today.
A massive shift in field position in one play. From inside their own 10, they're now threatening to score. Looking to throw it on 1st down. Grab down the middle. It's Abuka. They bring him down, but a solid gain there on 1st down. Looks to be just inches short of the marker.
Chris, that's a great example of his arm strength. He just fired the ball in there much quicker than the defense could even react.
A completion makes it second down. Scanning the field, it's Howard. Looking right, this one caught. They bring him down, but not before he gains first down yardage. Timeout is called to talk strategy late in this close game with halftime approaching. On 1st and 10, they'll look to throw it. Caught quickly. The pickup is 7 yards. Now it's 2nd and 3. Heads up, offense is now operating in the red zone. Quarterback looking to pass here on 2nd down. Oh, they've got him for a sack. A big play made by the junior. And the offense will now quickly spend a timeout. We come to the line, a long way to go for the first down, but needing this crucial conversion right now. Just gives up on the play, throws it away, and now it's 4th down. So a field goal attempt coming up now. Trying to knock it through from 44 yards away. He knocks this one right through.
Oh, Chris, it's a nice kick here to polish off that drive with at least 3 points up on the board.
So they settled for 3 here, and now the kickoff. See if the opposing offense can answer before halftime. Returner looking to make a play here. And he stopped at the 19. Good job by the coverage team. And the Georgia offense is back out on the field. You'd expect a prudent decision here, backed up near their own end zone. Just run the clock out and get to halftime. Running back has it on the screen now. They finally get him down, but a solid gain in that screen pass. Good call there. One more play before they head to the locker room. On 1st and 10, looking to throw. And that falls incomplete as time runs out on the first half of play. Miller's going to wrap up the first half here. Let's kick it now to Kevin Connors with our halftime update.
All right, guys, thanks. Looks like we've had ourselves a very enjoyable first half so far. And it's been said football is a game of inches. And guess what? Based on the comparison between third down conversion rate today and the average yard per play, how can you argue that? I mean, the low-lying fruit is to look at some of the explosive plays we've seen in panic. But really, this game is going to come down to which team is more efficient when they have the ball and how they play when it matters most. It's time to throw it back to our guys in the booth to start up the second half.
And the Ohio State offense comes back onto the field. Looking out throwing here to start the drive. Caught over the middle. It's Ballard. They stop him after a 6-yard gain, so 2nd and 4. And the Buckeyes come to the line looking to crank up the tempo.
Quarterback looks downfield to make this throw. He wants to be able to get the ball to be able to pick up enough yards for a first down. But instead, he gets the ball at least underneath to the drag route and gets some positive yards.
Looks downfield and connects with a wide-open wide receiver. And it's a huge chunk play. The tackle is finally made, but the ball moved to the 47-yard line.
Boy, what a throw and catch again by the Ohio State Buckeye offense. You think about how Ohio State has been able to really grow over the years. Go back and think about Chris Carter back in the 80s and Joey Galloway in the 90s. And, of course, most recently with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, Jackson Smith and Jigba. So many great receivers, and it's been fun to watch this young man today.
They'll stop him behind the line for a loss of 1. So the offense getting set. This is not where you want to be against this defense. 3rd and long. Hand it off for a draw. They'll stop him behind the line for a loss of 1. Buckeyes bring their punt team onto the field. Punt goes out of bounds. Looks like they'll spot it near the 15. And the powerful Georgia offense is back out on the field. They're finally looking to click. This has been a struggle for both offenses so far. And they'll tackle him about the 23-yard line. Offense getting set. It's 2nd down. Keep it on the ground. There's the handoff. Goes backwards, losing 3 yards there. So let's see what they like here on 3rd and short from inside their own 20. Important to pick up this first down. Looking to throw. It's back. Catch hauled in here over the middle. He's tackled quickly, but the yardage is good enough for the first down. The Dogs come to the line to start a fresh set of downs. And looking to throw now on first down. And looking for a big play here. Aggressive call, a deep shot on first down, but incomplete. Offense getting set up. Here's second down. Quarterback drops back. We're going to test the secondary. And he dumps it off to the tight end. They get it down, but the gain moves the ball into the 36. This Georgia offense is moving quickly down the field. Movement here from the tight end. Trying to find room. It's Etienne. Stopped right there at the line. No gain. Second down after that previous play. Takes the handoff again. That's a nice tackle there by the senior. Not going to be easy here. Backed up a long way to go for a first down. Drops back, needing a third down completion here. Easy throw to a wide open receiver downfield. An explosive play. They finally grab him, but the ball moves inside the 25.
Well, this quarterback is unflappable. Here they are working with the lead in the second half. Get to a third down. You got to throw the football. This is where you trust the quarterback to make a good decision, an accurate throw. He does it. You convert, and you keep working that clock.
Big chunk play. This offense operating at peak efficiency. It's a quick grab. They've got him, but he picks up 8 yards. Sets up a nice 2nd and 2. Georgia now operating in the red zone. Quarterback wants to throw it on second down. Grab down the middle. It's Lovett. They bring him down, but not before he picks up 1st and goal yardage to the 9. The offense sets up with a 1st and goal. They'll try to pick up the yardage on the ground. Couldn't quite get there, but brought down at the 1-yard line. Solid first down gain sets the ball up close to the goal line, and they finish it off here on 2nd and goal. Trying to find the end zone off the right side. They'll stop him behind the line for a loss of 1. An important 3rd down and goal now. Looking downfield, it's Beck. And it's caught. Touchdown, Bulldogs. Kirk, they were backed up to start the drive, but some bold play calling, great execution, and reach the end zone.
You know, it's easy to just kind of pull your horns in and get conservative when you're pushed way back close to your own goal line, but not this offense. They came out, showed the confidence that they have in their quarterback, and it paid off. Nice touchdown.
And now the try here for the extra point. The extra point is good, and they stretch the lead a little bit more. Kickoff team on the field getting set now. He'll bring it out from his end zone. Solid coverage there. They get it at the 15. That's where the offense will take over. Okay, here comes the Ohio State offense back on the field. They were forced to punt it away last time, so let's see if they can get clicking in this possession. Fights off a defender. Finding some room at the 25. They get him, but what a spin move. That's one for the highlight reel. They trust the left side of that offensive line and come up with a huge play on the ground.
Yeah, your favorite, Chris, there. The old pin and pull there to the left side. Great blocking on the left side, able to create a great push. Nice crease in the back. Found that with the vision and picks up some big yards for that first down.
And in first down, they go right back to him.
See, that's how you limit what an offense wants to do. This time, the defense just won the battle up front at the line of scrimmage, not giving up any big plays. Everybody's gap sound. It's really solid defense on that play.
Snags the quick throw. And he's wrapped up short of the marker there as the time runs down here in the third quarter. Well, Kirk, it's Georgia on top so far. And they got to be feeling pretty good about things as we wrap up the third quarter. Let's review how we got here. And now entering the final period of play, is there an epic comeback in store? We're going to find out. Drops back, looking to throw for it on third down. He's got an open man downfield, and it's caught. Tackle is finally made, but an explosive gain. They'll move it down to the 23-yard line.
Chris, here we are in the fourth quarter. These guys are trailing. Have been a great day, but with this quarterback, he's as gifted as anybody in the country. You never count these guys out.
The Buckeyes looking to crank up the tempo a bit. Back to pass. It's Howard. Delivers from the pocket, complete over the middle.
How about the job by this defense against this receiver? One of the top receivers in the country. They knew he was going to be able to be a big factor in this game, and they have kept him quiet all game long until right now. In the fourth quarter, he comes up with his first catch.
The Buckeyes starting a new series here on 1st and 10. Looking to throw again. Caught on the outside. It's Ballard. And he'll run out of bounds, picking up a few yards on the play. Here comes a crucial second down play. Every yard tough to find down here in the red zone. Quarterback pulls the ball. It's a keeper. Nowhere to run. They'll corral him for no gain. This is crucial. Defense needing a stop on third down, trying to force a field goal. Dropping back, looking to throw for the first down. Looking for 6. Intercepted in the end zone. And he's wrapped up after a solid return.
Boy, would this quarterback love to have this one back. They're trying to work themselves back into this game here in the second half. And the defense comes up with a big turnover that could be the nail in the coffin.
Little eye candy here from the offense. Some pre-snap motion. Handoff as they try to work the clock here.
Man, just complimentary football, really, in a nutshell. They get this football back thanks to their own defense, creating that turnover, working with the lead like this. Really, it's all but over. Now the offense is just thinking about running the football and working that clock.
And he'll pick up the first down, stopped at the 27. A running play gives the offense a fresh set of downs. Takes the handoff. It's Etienne. And the one moves the ball up to the 33. And that's the 2-minute warning. This offense looking to run out the clock and secure an impressive win here today. They'll keep it on the ground with the draw play. Tackled at the 40. That'll earn a fresh set of downs. And now it's the defense that calls timeout here, trying to get organized and preserve as much clock as possible. Out of the shotgun, he'll hand it off. Fights through the tackler. And now a timeout taken by the defense, trying to preserve as much clock as possible for their offense. Second down after that run on the previous play. They're going to run it here. The sophomore with a strong tackle there. And now it's the defense that calls timeout here, trying to get organized and preserve as much clock as possible. Third down after that running play. Play action fake, looking to throw. And he's looking to make a big play downfield. And that's incomplete. They weren't afraid to let it fly, but it brings up a fourth down. The Dogs will have to kick this away. He's on to boot it away now. Oh, it landed at the 8-yard line, but a lucky bounce into the end zone for a touchback. Here comes the powerful Buckeye offense back onto the field. On 1st and 10 here, looking to throw the ball. Here's a wide-open receiver, complete. And they'll bring him down, but this offense creates a huge chunk play. They attack the deep middle of this defense, come up with a big play.
Nice job giving that quarterback time to throw. Good job of making that read to the middle of the field and working against those safeties, and a big play is the result.
The clock is still running. They got to get set quickly. First down, looking to throw the ball. Caught over the middle. It's Judkins. And he's brought down, but there is a penalty marker out there. Let's check out this call.
What I always love to see on these offsides call is when they're always pointing at each other. You know, he did it. I didn't do it. Put it on him. We know this time it's on the defense. They're going to make the right call.
Junior steps up and makes an impact play.
And just like that, you squeeze the life out of this offense. That's another sack by this defense. They have been in that backfield the entire game, and a big reason why these guys are enjoying a lead.
They'll crank up the tempo here on second down. The time is running out. Now they come up to spike it to stop the clock. Challenging play for the offense. They face third and long here from their own 43. Back to throw. It's Howard. He's running out of time here. Throws the ball away, but not before taking a hit. So down by multiple possessions here. The offense will try to convert here on fourth down. Here's the snap. Quarterback looking to throw. Finds his receiver. That's enough for the first down. They make the tackle, but he easily gets first down yardage, and the drive keeps going.
Well, the defense is in the right coverage here. It looked like they had exactly what they wanted to be able to come up with a stop here on fourth down. But there's the timing between a quarterback and the receiver. They knew exactly where they needed to go. Great timing and a first down.
Fourth down conversion gives them a fresh set of downs, but time is running out. They get to the line quickly. And the offense wisely spikes the ball here to stop the clock. Second down and goal upcoming. There's the snap. They'll set up to throw. He's moving out of the pocket. And he runs it in for the score. Touchdown, Buckeyes.
Chris, I mean, this game is essentially over, and these guys are still fighting and trying to get the ball in the end zone, and they do. Those are the kind of things that coaches pay attention to, and really you start to learn about who are your fighters, who are your foxhole guys. We're learning that about this team today.
Lining up to try the extra point. PHC is good and still trail, though. I believe they're lining up to attempt an onside kick. And the hands team able to recover the football.
Well, Chris, as you know, this is one of the toughest things to do in all of football, trying to recover the onside kick. But let's give credit to the hands team there for coming down with that ball for the return unit.